right. So every Tuesday we said we would gather together and talk about memories of Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj. Tonight we will be exploring a little bit about him in regards to his book, Spiritual Warrior 4. And we'll share, Ekavira Prabhu and myself will share a few pastimes about him, His Holiness Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, and what made him write this book. As we remember some of those pastimes with him during the time when he was contemplating to write the book, and then during the time when he was writing the book. So we're so happy to be with all of you. We're here with our team. We have Anna and we have Kishirani, and Leela tonight is not feeling so well. She's not ill. She doesn't have coronavirus. She's just a little bit exhausted because it's so busy on her job. So tonight she's not with us. So we're really missing her. However, Ekavira Prabhu and myself, Kishirani and Anna, we're here together, and we are going to share a little bit about Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj and why he wrote this book. So I wanted to share that in terms of the Spiritual Warrior 4, which is conquering the mind, during the time that he was contemplating writing the book, he was, one of the things that's important to know is that Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj's special area, the areas that he really concentrated on in terms of helping people, was to assist leaders to be more authentic. He really was dedicated to people that were in leadership roles around the world. And he was also very dedicated to spiritualists, people that had different faiths that were sometimes stuck on their path. And sometimes they may have some stagnations from just being here in the world. And he wanted to assist these different people to become more authentic in their different communities. So a lot of these people that he met during the times that he was traveling inspired him to write these two books. This is Spiritual Warrior 4 and Spiritual Warrior 5. And they're both addressing the mind, both of these books. And so, Ekavira Prabhu, we will both share with you a couple of pastimes. So that I just a little introduction of why he wanted to write these books, because he saw not in all spiritual communities, including ours, including those persons that are in the path of bhakti, that oftentimes we're faced with different kinds of stagnations in our spiritual life. And so he wanted so much to assist people because he had that training. As some of you may know, that he attended Rutgers University, where his undergraduate degree was in psychology. And so he had that training in helping people to deal with challenges of the mind. And so he was really, really dedicated to this. So a couple of things I just want to, couple of different pastimes that came to mind for me was one, how much he cared about those devotees, those persons that came from him teaching in public environments. And many of them, he actually trained them to be a part of his book team. Just like we have a team, Anna, myself, Kishirani, we're a team to bring the teachings of Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, and also, you know, to bring more knowledge, more ways of how we can incorporate spiritual knowledge in our daily lives. So similarly, Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, he was really dedicated to trying to help people to do this continuously. This was such a major part of his spiritual process, his spiritual life, even as a spiritual leader, he was so much dedicated, to doing this. So what I saw during the years that he would write books, I would see how caring he was to those persons that came to kind of learn about Krishna consciousness, and he would find out what their skills were. As when they would come and they would, be interested to learn, and they would be new to Krishna consciousness. And I remember one of my services was to be able to find out what skills these persons had. And so when I would talk with them, I would learn some things about whether they had skills in terms of proofreading, or they had skills in terms of transcribing, or skills in terms of layout, or skills that's related to writing and printing a book. And so, it was really interesting for me, because as I learned about these persons that were coming, and also as I was also assisting with in so many different areas with the new people that were coming to Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, I also had this really joyful service to find out who had different skills. And I remember when I would go to Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, and I would say, oh, this girl, Leela Kata, her name was Leela, her name was Lauren, when she came. I said, Lauren, Guru Maharaj, she was a school teacher, and she majored in English, and she has the skill of knowing English, and so he said, oh, find out if she can edit. Maybe she can edit one of the books, And so I would go and I would check and find out, what skills do you have as an English teacher? What did you do? What can you do? Like that. And she became Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj's editor. She became the editor for so many of his books. And so many of the new people would come like this, and I would be the one that would go and find out. I remember this one person his name is Adam. And he had this really high corporate job, because Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj engaged people, like he didn't encourage people to leave their jobs. He really kind of encouraged people to keep their jobs and learn and use the skills that they had on their jobs. And so this one person named Aja, his name actually was Adam, and as I said, he came from this company, he's a professional. And I remember talking with this Adam person when he's new, and finding out that he had layout skills. He had skills where he could lay out, a book, and he also had editing skills, and, so many skills like this. And so Adam became Aja, because he got initiated by Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, and he became a part of the team. And actually, he became one of the main persons on our layout team. So Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, he taught so many of us, but however, I was the one that was engaged in when the new people came to kind of cultivate them with their skills and their tools that they may have had from working in the secular world, and seeing how we could utilize those skills and tools in Krishna's service, and how to encourage them with those skills and tools, and how to help them to really take leadership roles in, what we were doing as far as printing the books. And so this specific book, when he was getting ready to write this book, it was really kind of deep, because it really deals with, all the things that goes on with the mind. 2 books, 4 and 5. And so I remember the editor, Leela Kata, as she was editing what he was writing, she was also learning so much from this book. And she would say to me, wow, I didn't know that, and I didn't know that, and I didn't know that. So while she was doing that service of editing what he had written, she herself was learning so much from just reading what Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj had written. And so Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj cultivated many devotees like this. He was so expert in finding people and utilizing their skills for Krishna and giving them roles of leadership and letting them just like fly with those roles of leadership. And so that was something I learned, from him, which I really value today, how to encourage people and let them take on leadership roles and give them autonomy with leadership roles and really inspire them to be better and better and better. And so, that was one pastime I wanted to share with all of you about this methodology that Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj used that was so caring and so loving. He showed so much support to his book team, because after we got all of these people that were so skilled, they became a team. And he would have meetings with the team and he would inspire the team. And they were also empowered with all the different aspects of how they were helping with all these books. And so leaders, these, as I said, spiritual warrior, this series they were very important to Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, because these were the books, the spiritual warrior series, that were designed to help people with their blocks and their different stagnations in as they're following their different spiritual paths. So Ekavira, did you want to share something about spiritual warrior? And
I guess in reference to the practicing spiritualists, and they may have be experiencing different stagnations or blocks. Vrajalila was emphasizing how caring Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj was in dealing with new people that came, and then expertly engaging them in the service and to helping other people. I also recall how many persons who would come to him who were followers of maybe another tradition, who may even be leaders in another tradition, who may have, may be disciples of persons in our own particular tradition. Every week we would get numerous people that would come, and they come there and they seek his guidance, and most of which were coming because they had certain challenges. They were having a certain stagnation in their own spiritual life, and he was being commissioned to assist them. And I remember how much time he used to spend with each and every one that would come. I used to think, I was like, man, why is he spending so much time with them? You know, goodness gracious, we have things to do. But he was so caring. And then I remember speaking to him one time about it, asking, this one particular couple, they would come every week, and it was understood that they weren't going to actually dedicate themselves to our particular project. And, but still they would come every week, and they had a little air, a little bit of, how could I say, beyond self-confident. And Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj used to be so compassionate dealing with them. Every week they would come and they spent so much time with them. And so I asked him, I said, Guru Maharaj, why do you spend so much time with them? He said, because, yes, they're going through this particular challenge, and their particular guide is a very special servant. And this is the way in which I can do service to him. Because I don't have, direct connection with him, but I can actually serve him through these people in which he is sent to me. And so I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, that's, he really was expert in addressing the concerns of people's minds. And he was very personal with that, because he understood that people were very challenged, and in this world. And he really understood that when someone would write to him or someone would call to meet with him, that person was the most important person, at the time that he would be dealing with them. I remember how when he would travel and come back from traveling, he would come back sometimes like late, in the night, early in the morning. And whenever he got back, it didn't matter what time it was. And this was a time when, of course, he used to get emails, not emails, but he used to get letters. He got emails, and then people also used to send letters. And so he would open every letter before he would go to sleep, which means he would have traveled from someplace in Europe or wherever, Africa, wherever, come back. He would be super exhausted. At the same time, he would just, take the time to respond to people because he understood how important it was to address what was going on for those persons in their minds. And so that's the reason he wrote this book, these two books. This first one, we're talking a little bit about this first one, which is Conquering the Enemies of the Mind. And in this book, he relates to things in the mind like fear and lust and greed and envy and madness and illusion. And he explains in this book that the affiliates of these anarthas that we have, or these challenges that we have, that some of them are like grief and depression and chronic anxiety and panic attacks and obsessive compulsive behavior, post-traumatic stress. And these are some of the areas that people are facing today. So he wrote this book in actually 2003, at the end of 2003, and we printed it, the team, which was called Harinam Press, we had our own printing press. They printed this book in 2004, 1 year before he left his body. And this book was funded by his disciples in England. So he would really, whenever someone came to him to learn, he would also find ways to engage them in the services that he was doing. So when people would come to him from England or UK, then he would find ways how to engage them. So these devotees from UK, they funded actually this book, Spiritual Warrior 4. And so in dealing with these different influences of the mind, he wanted to help people to learn how to bridge the traumatic experiences they may be having in the mind with Krishna consciousness. And so he wrote these books as bridges, because he had so much experience of how to address the mind. And he what he did was bridge the knowledge that he had from psychology of the mind to Vedic philosophy. And in that way, he was able to, address people with the concerns that they may have. And so he also explains that, in this book, that all of these, he calls them enemies of the mind. And he says that all of these enemies of the mind are influenced by the false ego. And so his service to the world was to be able to help people to understand how to transform the false ego into real ego. And in order to do that, one of the areas that he addresses in his book is fear, because fear is actually related to the false ego. And so Ekavira is going to read something from the book on fear, and we'll share that with you tonight.
Okay. Again, this is from the Spiritual Warrior 4, Conquering the Enemies of the Mind. Show you a little glimpse of it. This is from one particular chapter entitled Choosing Love Over Fear. And this segment is entitled The Culture of Fear. So the world is at war. It is a very serious time due to the massive thrust toward this culture of fear that causes people to put their guards down and act accordingly to their own lower nature. This culture of fear causes them to feed the evil dog. which then puts anxiety into the environment and makes it easier to control people. Fear can lead to all kinds of irrational behavior because people will simply want to save themselves or want to force something to happen in their own way. They lose a sense of community, which involves serving and caring for each other. And they end up fixing their minds only on their own particular concerns or ideas. For many people, work because they do not act as genuine partners. They are not ready to accept and trust the other person. When people develop spiritual relationships within institutions or with the spiritual master, they often lack authenticity because of the lack of this love. It often revolves around manipulation and exploitation. The relationship will develop out of fear if people use others to try to build up their own sense of protection. This goes on in commerce, education, and also in spirituality. Most people are selfish due to fear that is smothering the world. In your own lives, try to avoid falling into these patterns. Otherwise, the amazing current of fear that is sweeping the planet and causing people to absorb themselves more in eating, sleeping, mating, and fearing will sweep you away. It is gradually becoming a more dominant aspect of Kali Yuga. For this reason, people take to a harsher lifestyle. Their loving propensity has been shut down and transformed into fear.
So, as Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj's teacher, his mentor, his spiritual teacher, his spiritual master, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada has written so many books, to assist us with understanding the sphere. So similarly, Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, he carefully wrote these two books in ways to help people to understand it. He broke it down in simple language so that everyone could understand, made perhaps a little easier, how to address some of these different, as he calls them, enemies of the mind. And one of them is fear. And of course, now we see that there's panic in our country, there's panic in the world. And so we can understand that Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj cared so much for people that however many years ago that was, 20 years ago or more plus, he was always in that mood of how to care for people and what would happen with their minds as we face the kind of things that we're facing now. So Ekavira, now we thank you so much. This is what we wanted to share with you tonight, is how we can all come together in a mood of loving and caring and sharing some of these basic principles, to spiritual principles, to help us to somehow or other not become victims to the fear that's going on in the world today. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, dear Vrajalila Mataji and Ekavira Prabhu. It was very amazing and very important. I will try to follow Lila's instruction and recap. It was great how you talked about Bhakti Tirtha Swami so personally that it made me want to meet him so much and made me want to become just like him, like, oh wow, I wanna perform service like that. And then you read from his book where he's talking about healing, especially psychological healing is impossible without spirituality, without the God-centered mentality, and how if we don't follow that, out of fear we start using each other, and our capacity for love transforms into fear. That is definitely a really scary reality, talking about fear. And that is definitely something that I would like to know more about. And I also know that we have a webinar coming up about fear that I'm hoping to really learn a lot about Bhakti Tirtha Swami's philosophy on fear and how to deal with that in the kind of crisis when it's happening in the outside world. It's definitely looking forward to that, and we will announce all the details in the next Facebook Live and the ads on social media. Please visit our page on Facebook and stay tuned.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sri Rani.